Hey guys, in this video I want to talk about Dodge&Burn and the different kinds of Dodge&Burn. For those who don't know how Dodge&Burn is used or how I use Dodge&Burn, let me show you this image. This is already retouched, so I try to maintain all the informations and use my retouching just to make things a little bit more pleasant for the eye. So the same goes for Dodge&Burn as well. So when I switch this off, you can see what I did was I just smoothed out the transition of light. So you can see that it looks way better with Dodge&Burn than without, but this is just, well, just a normal variations in the skin that I can just get rid with Dodge&Burn. So, but I don't want to dive too deep, but I want to talk about the concepts of Dodge&Burn. So, Dodge&Burn is a very, very old technique that was used in analog photography as well, where the photographers just used light to make things brighter or darker and making the image a little bit more present for the eye. With today's technique, it's with the digital image manipulation software like Photoshop and co. It's very easy to do this non-destructively, and I think it's a technique that everyone should learn because it's powerful and it's awesome. So there are various ways to do it. So let's first create a stamp of the whole image. So go to this. And the most basic tools are probably the Dodge tool and the Burn tool. What they do is I can change the range. So it's affecting shadows, midtones, or highlights, and I can change the exposure. And obviously I can click Protect Tones, so my color doesn't get messed up. And then all I do is I paint over these areas that I want to make brighter. For the Burn tool, it's the opposite, so the stuff gets darker. However, this works only on really on the image, because it takes the pixels from the image, and so it's a very destructive way to do Dodge&Burning. So someone who was really clever came up with a solution. He said, I'm using a fill layer and fill this with neutral gray, with 50% gray. And this layer goes to linear light or soft light. So it doesn't change anything. And then he can use the Dodge&Burn tools in the same way. So, and if he uses the Dodge tool, it gets brighter, and the Burn tool makes it darker. However, it works only with the midtones, and as you can see here, it's not quite the same. So it works very differently because it doesn't take the original pixel. It can't protect the tones. It can't adjust the saturation and stuff, which is important. So that gray layer Dodge&Burn with the Dodge&Burn tools is pretty much useless in my opinion. So are the tools Dodge&Burn. What I use is the brush tool because I tend to have more control with the brush tool. And I mean, when I paint with white on this layer, I have the same effect. And when I paint with black on that layer, I get actually a Burn tool. So this is how I use it sometimes when I'm working on a gray layer. But as I'm using this the normal brush, I can also use just an empty layer in the linear light. So put this off, and I got actually the same effect here. So making it lighter or darker. Can also use soft light. It's a little bit less strong. So I can use the an empty layer as well. So I don't need a gray layer for this. But however, this technique has a problem, because when you think about our total range from 0 to 255, we have between white and black, we have 255 steps. And when I use neutral gray as the middle point, then I have only 128 or 127, because there's no real middle point. 127 points for dodging and 128 points for burning. So especially when you're working on black and white images with soft brushes on gray layers to make some like gradients and stuff, you most likely get some banding in your image because of that limited band of the limited range of 128 steps. You can avoid this by using 16-bit images, but 16-bit images take a lot more processing power and also a lot more space on your hard drive. So it's a little bit of an overload in terms of performance. So if you need to work on 8-bit images, you should avoid that technique. What I use is a curves layer. So you can also do a curves layer, make it a little bit brighter here. So like this. And because of there is a mask, you can paint on this mask. So this is actually the same. But you cannot work on one layer. So you need 2 layers, one for dodge and one for burn. So let's duplicate this and make the adjust the curve. So this is getting, oops, this is getting darker here. So like this one. And now when I paint on this mask, I get the burn effect. And well, if you look at the curve, I'm mostly affecting the midtones, and the highlights and the shadows are not affected, or nearly not affected with this curve. So this is not a linear response to the brightness of the image, and this is pretty good, because that way you're keeping the shadows and the darks, the blacks and the whites and the lights. So you're mostly affecting midtones, where the main issue that will be done with Dodge and Burn occurs. So there is one thing that makes the Dodge and Burn tools actually pretty clever, and this is this Protect Tones folder, or Protect Tones setting, because the Protect Tones setting, what it does, it protects the tones, and part of the tones is based on the fact that shadows have more saturation than highlights. So whenever I change a highlight to a shadow, because I'm using a dodge tool and make it darker, I actually need to increase the saturation, so it has the natural saturation of that shadow. Otherwise, I will end up with skin that's sometimes a little bit gray. And also in the other direction, if I use the dodge tool and make shadows lighter, I need to take away some of the saturation, because the highlights are less saturated. To do this, I get rid of these masks, and this one also. And this was the burn, I think, right? And this was the dodge. So dodge. What you can do is use a group. So this is the dodge group, and another group for the burn group. And this goes here, and this goes there. And now what I do is I invert that layer here, the layer mask of that curve, and I create a black layer on the actual folder. So that means when I paint on this folder mask here with a white brush, then it will be it will get darker. Let's increase the flow so you can see it. If I paint here on that Dodge folder, it will get lighter. And this is pretty good, because everything that's in this group, in this folder, is affected by my painting. So what I can do is I can create a hue and saturation layer here, and I can, for the Dodge, actually decrease my saturation. So you see it's getting gray. So I definitely need to be careful. Usually a setting between 10 and 20 is good. And for my actual burn layer, I will create a hue saturation layer and increase the saturation here. So that means everything that gets darker will get a higher saturation. That was probably a little bit too much, so I'm back here. So as you can see, when I switch this off, I hope you can see this. If you have this shadow, look at this shadow, the saturation is way higher than in this area here. So that's the reason why I put this in, to increase the saturation and make this a believable shadow. The same goes for highlights. If I look at the highlight on the lip here and this highlight with the hue and saturation off, I get a way higher saturation than here on the natural highlight. So the created highlight is actually too saturated, and that's what this hue saturation layer does. And this is pretty good and can't be done with neutral gray layers. So you also can just close these two folders, and so you have to switch backward and forward to do your Dodge and Burn. Then there is a tip: when you do Dodge and Burning, do always do Dodge and Burn on a black and white version, and do this by adding a layer with a solid color, black, white, gray, something without saturation. So fill this with black and put this into the layer mode color. So that way the saturation will be taken away, but the luminosity of these colors are still present. So I can really work on this, and then can focus on the luminosity on the which is brighter and darker, and I can really work on this with this technique. And later, if you're done, you just take this away, and usually with the linked saturation layer, you should be fine with the colors as well. Yeah, that's pretty much the base of my Dodge and Burning, and I think Dodge and Burning takes about 50% of my time, and the other 50% are just healing and color work. So Dodge and Burn is pretty much the biggest part, and the part where you can just get lost and do your daily meditation by just dodging and burning. So I hope you had some interesting moments in this video. So take a moment and leave us a like and share it with your family and friends. And we are seeing each other next time. Bye bye. This was Stefan for Raw Exchange.